Legion Behemoth Katarina, a novel of God's Legion, by J.T. Dowdy. Chapter 1. When I first learned I was being transferred to a behemoth from my beloved Onyx tank, I knew the end was surely near. Coming from a tank crew, the size disparity between the two machines is such that only those who could not hear thunder and see lightning could possibly fail to notice our coming. My old tank was a sleek hunting machine, which, in the right hands, was capable of seeing my crew through a full 20 years of service before the day I met the Legion Master. Now I am the gunner of a 400-foot-tall bipedal war machine with as many weapons as a small starship. Please do not mistake me. The soft bed and fully stocked kitchen are a wonderful luxury, but I know someday we will get caught by some sneaky, emplaced gun, because we are just too tall for our own good. Excerpt from The Life of an Armored Officer by Ansel Kruger. Ansel Kruger awoke in darkness to the wailing of emergency sirens in the far-off distance. Flinging his blanket off, he drunkenly lurched out of bed only to bang his head on a low-hanging cabinet while cracking his shins against a metal table before crashing back to the deck. Swearing sulphurously, he reached for his discarded clothes and was thankful he laid them out the same way every time since joining the Legion some 7,000 years ago. He used to be a regular vanilla mortal. That was, of course, until his prowess as a tank commander caught the eye of the eternal being who leads the Legion, the creator hiding behind the name Lucifer. Unlike Ansel's fully immortal brethren in the true angels, his body still required sleep and organic food to function. While fighting his body's drunken movements, the mortal angel noticed a rhythmic beeping noise accompanying the sirens. Looking towards the source of the beeps, his mind ground into lethargic motion as he reached out and swatted his offending alarm clock across the room. The sirens ceased their wailing as Ansel remembered he was inside of a behemoth, a 400-foot-tall bipedal war engine made for inflicting industrial-scale death from a distance. They were soundproof to the outside world, mostly at any rate. Thanks to powerful electromuscles, a behemoth could move as nimbly as the sentience driving it could manage. A vast circulatory system pumped nanites throughout the machine's body to aid in repairs, as well as supplying ammunition to the numerous weapons mounted on various hardpoints. Photoreactive camouflage would see the great machine blend into whatever environment the drivers wished, although the factory complex-sized heat plumes generated by the behemoth's spinal-mounted heat exchangers hardly aided in stealth. The war machine was heavily armored, yet thanks to its too tall size, the behemoth was easy prey for hidden anti-armor weapons and ground vehicles. Suited more for long-range support, the behemoth was more limited than its smaller and more heavily armored Goliath cousins and the ubiquitous Onyx main battle tanks. Ansel rubbed his pounding head in the darkness and flinched like he had been shot when the lights turned on low. To the angel, they seemed to stab at him like gaudy neon in a seedy bar. Come to think of it, the room smelled like such a place as the smell of stale alcohol mingled with cheap food, personal lubricants, and the unique smell of his fully synthetic co-pilot. He would have called it his room if he did not share the bed with his much senior partner and ranking officer. "Oh, God," Ansel said in a low-pitched, pitiful moan. "That's not funny, Kat." Kat, short for Katarina, was his direct superior and held an advanced age which made him look no older than a newborn mortal. She was a member of an ancient race, many times, many universes old, who had long ago downloaded their consciousnesses into great digital machines. Though her body was synthetic, the flesh and blood feel and appearance would fool anyone not paying close attention. What was supposed to be a perpetual paradise had long since turned into a living hell for her people, and it was none other than the near-mythical Legion Master who had saved Katarina's people from their self-inflicted prison. No one knew for certain how long their minds dwelled in the machine. At least if they did, they were incredibly careful to never speak of it in public or to outsiders. In gratitude, Katarina's people have served as living computer cores for everything from starships to ground-based weapons. As the being hiding behind the name, Lucifer was the only creator capable of fielding entire armies of angels, and because of this unique facet, his legion had rules of conduct which would seem odd to outsiders of more normal militaries. For example, the legion had no laws against superior and subordinate relations. In fact, the legion master encouraged them whenever possible because of a sentient mind's need to protect their partner. Besides, having fully half of his fighting force angelic, or in some other form quasi-immortal, such prohibitions would have been thrown out of the window at the first opportunity anyway. There were a few handfuls of exceptions, but, as a general rule, immortals and angels had the same desires and needs as their mortal companions. I left you a glass with a few fingers of last night's whiskey by the bed if you haven't spilled it yet, Katarina said, in a low-pitched voice which felt like a jackhammer to the hungover mortal angel. Down it and meet me in the core once you get dressed. We finally have something to do, besides standing around looking threatening. Ansel sat up straight at his partner's words. Orders. The word felt heavy in his mind and carried nightmarish connotations. The mortal angel was not a coward by any means. It was just the orders would no doubt be to attack a fortified city known as Buchanal. It was known informally as the City of Bones, due to the tens of millions of dead Empire slaves who had gone ahead of the Legion in attempts to take the city, and now laid in rotting fields before the walls. Ansel shook his head to rid himself of such thoughts. If his behemoth was to get new orders, then the rest of Legio Azrael would have the same as well. They were not going in alone. Ansel reached out a shaky hand to bring the previous night's drink to his lips. It was hideously cheap and smelled more like varnish than proper booze. He downed it, and within seconds he felt the throbbing of his head subside enough where he could muster the courage to bend over and pull his pants on. The process involved more swearing and grunting than was necessary, even including him sprawling on the deck again. His boots went on without any problems, though the straps which secured it to his ankles proved tricky this morning. The roomy boots were an ancient design born out of practicality. Loose-fitting and unsecured garments had an unfortunate habit of getting caught in the moving metal parts of armored machines to bring about crippling injuries or even death. Boot laces, which had a habit of coming undone, were one of the first things any sentient people making armored fighting machines learned to discard. For this reason, Ansel and all Legion armored troops wore tighter-fitting clothes than was standard. His black cotton pants fit him like a glove, and instead of the traditional deep purple colonial jacket, he wore a tight-fitting vest over his equally tight black shirt. Normally a Legionnaire's jacket had brilliant silver buttons and piping to add class and character. Armored uniforms dismissed with such stylish embellishments for the fear of them coming loose or getting caught. While such events were extraordinarily rare in Legion armored vehicles, the typically angelic officers had seen practically everything in their hideously long lives. A person only needed to see one time someone getting maimed because something became caught in a machine to have a healthy respect for such things. Though Katarina was the only other person in the war machine, Ansel made his way over to the small attached bathroom to give himself a once-over and rid his breath of its rubbing alcohol reek. The angel was unlike his true-made brethren in that he was not a hulking slab of muscle. The gunner was just as thin now as he was back when just a regular mortal. His head was shaved to allow his helmet's connections to properly interface with his cranial implants. While such things could be done wirelessly, the Legion was a fan of direct contact and did not trust wireless signals for obvious reasons. His eyes were a deep emerald green, while his facial hair and stubble were ordinary brown. The right side of his face was a wash of deep scars and puncture wounds from back when he was a tank commander. A conventional shell had shattered against his tank's sloped frontal armor to pepper his exposed head as he was scanning a long-ago ancient battlefield. Reaching up, the angel rubbed the scars and marveled at how long ago that engagement was. Lucifer had offered to fix his body during the ascendancy rites, but Ansel decided to keep the scars, as he thought it made him look more grizzled and battle-worn for the ladies. Some 7,000 years later, though, he was tired of getting his razor caught on his puckered skin. Most days anymore, the mortal angel just used a hair-dissolving cream. He hated the way it made his scarred face feel like a baby's bottom, but Katarina liked clean-shaven men. Besides, though long in the past, Ansel's old screaming drill instructor from his home, People's Military, had scared him so badly on some things, such as forgetting to shave for morning muster. He just did what his muscle memory told him to do. What his partner referred to as the core was the command bridge from where the pair would operate their war machine. Technically, all of the living spaces were housed in the core, as the parts of the machine made for the pilots was nestled within an armored sphere mounted on gimbals and inertial dampeners. Katarina could move the machine however fast she wanted, in whatever manner she wanted, and the core would do its best to always keep the same orientation thanks to its smooth-as-silks mounts. Ansel slid through the bridge's armored hatch to pass his partner on his way to his seat. Even as tired and hungover as he was, the angel still held out the habitual fist so his partner could bang her knuckles into them. Katarina was shorter than Ansel and molded her synthetic body based on what she remembered of her original flesh and blood one. She had little in the way of bust, yet made up for it with her curvy hips and what most would call thunder thighs. From what she remembered, she had always been teased for her flat chest back when she was alive, and strangely, found herself unable to rectify the problem now that she could fashion her body to her liking. She had spent so long in the machine as the perfect big-breasted woman with a wasp waist she had always wanted to be. She found such a look now disgusting. Besides, her partner liked her just the way she was. The sentience scratched absently at her buzz-cut scalp and looked at the gunner with almond-brown eyes. A thin smile touched her lips as she saw the gentile way Ansel eased himself into his chair. "Sleep well?" she asked. She herself had no need for sleep, and would generally leave the bed they shared after Ansel had fallen asleep to go about her work and whatever her current hobby was. The angel cracked his knuckles loudly before flexing his fingers like a creepy puppeteer about to put on a show. "Don't remember," he replied. Ansel's fingers danced over his consoles, which brought many floating hollow screens to life. The bridge was a raised walkway, nestled in the middle of a hollow sphere. The screens were for the gunner's benefit, as Katarina was entirely integrated with the machine and could process the myriad of sensor data without the need for visual aids. There were two sets of floating hollow images. The outermost covered the internal surface of the sphere to give a perfect 360-degree view of the outside world. The second layer was closer in and provided most of Ansel's weapons data, while other individual hollow screens came and went, depending on what was needed at the time. Running his usual pre-walk tests saw the Behemoth's arms move slightly, as the gunner confirmed targeting calibrations and checked the various weapons functions. Next, he rotated the shoulder-mounted missile pods through their full range of motion and found the left one to be sluggish and sticky. He directed nanites to clear the wind-blown sand blockage in the mount and ran checks on the infrared laser and micro-missile anti-air batteries. They all showed green and operational. He raised a closed fist with the thumbs-up gesture to his partner. "All good on my end, Kat," he said. "We're set for your morning stretches." "Why, thank you, partner," Katarina replied. Despite the almost 40,000-ton weight of the Behemoth, Katarina's now digital mind was able to put the war machine through a series of stretches and yoga poses as effortlessly as the most fluent dancer in all of creation. The stretches were necessary to loosen up the machine's electromuscles from their inactivity during the night. The two pilots stood looking down on a low-walled city their foot-slogger brethren had taken 3 months prior. Those legionnaires on the ground who had worked besides behemoths and Goliaths before quickly extruded their armored helmets to block the dust generated as Katarina began preforming push-ups with her vast, metallic bulk. The rhythmic pumping of the behemoth's chest quickly caused a small-scale sandstorm from the desert ground below. Ansel was forced to close his eyes as the rapidly ascending and falling ground made his stomach churn, and the previous night's food and drink threatened to make another appearance. A message of protest came from the city's commanding centurion as the behemoth performed a quick series of jumping jacks. Ansel knew from experience the shock waves made by the armored feet of his machine were absolute hell for ground pounders. It was the small things in life which gave the pilots joy in their eternal lives. Ansel opened the gun ports to clear any sand which had been forced into weapon mounts as Katarina stood the machine up to its full height. It stood out as just a bipedal rock formation, thanks to its optical camouflage. Katarina brought her armored hands up to punch the air in front of the machine a few times before delivering a solid, sweeping high kick, which caused the air to move out of the way with a shriek. Ansel leaned back in his chair and grabbed the cup which rested mag-locked in a holder on the right side of his console. Cracking the spill-proof seal, he took a drink of last night's coffee. With a grimace, he closed the lid and shook it to mix the sugar which had settled to the bottom to make the drink bearable. "Did you cheat last night?" he asked. Katarina snorted as if offended. "Why would I cheat at strip poker if I can't get drunk? Kinda takes all of the fun out of it." The gunner reached up a hand to lightly tap the side of his head. "My pounding headache seems to say otherwise." Katarina knew Ansel was smiling. Just as both of them knew, she could instinctually count cards and guess the order of any deck after the first 3 hands, regardless of how many times the mortal angel shuffled it. Katarina spoke in a sultry voice while fluttering her eyelashes. "And just what fun is it if I let you win all the time? Don't tell me you don't enjoy being pickled like the rest of us college dropouts turned soldier wannabes?" "Meh," the gunner mumbled before speaking louder and raising his right arm to flex one of his skinny biceps. "The end result is the same anyway, thanks to me being a paragon of manhood, which you cougars find irresistible. You mentioned orders. Are we doing what I think we are doing?" Katarina nodded, even though her partner could not see her. "Yeah," she said. "Looks like the old man is tired of wasting our time here. He ordered Azrael to pound Buchanal throughout the night, and the angel did not disappoint. I flew a drone around the city, and it looks like a natural disaster after it was birthed from a calamity. The walls are half crumbled, and from the footage, it does not look like the city's defenders will be putting up much of a fight. None of the legionnaires on the planet liked this slow, grinding combat, but the planet's owner, Creator Bast, wanted to save as much infrastructure as she could. The legionnaires wanted to bombard everything from orbit, as it was the quickest way and risked the least amount of lives, but they were guests here. "So," Ansel said, drawing out the syllables with comical slowness, "expect the defenders to be fully awake and prepared for us. Damn those first creation monsters." "Yup," Katarina replied cheerfully. The first creation were an ever-expanding nightmare of an enemy from the supposed first ever created universe. This creation even lacked the distinction between organic and inorganic, and the resulting intelligences had the hyperfast mind of one of the supposed mythical thinking machines, and yet still possessing the adaptability of organics. Even the best trained mortals were too slow and sluggish to fight one of them, and only the angels could ever hope to hold their own. Yet, angels needed cannon fodder to allow them to get into position where their incredible skill would do the most damage, hence the use of uncountable Empire slaves. Ansel winced as he lowered the almost ice-cold interface helmet down on his scalp to make the necessary neural connections needed to effectively do his job. Looking down and to the left, let the gunner see a steady stream of bedraggled-looking Empire slaves marching forth from the relative safety of the city to their doom at Buchanal, which was 20 miles away over scorching hot sand. The sun-darkened slaves were half-naked and carried only the most basic of chemical-powered rifles and relatively few spare magazines and kit. The Empire was not known for caring, one way or another, if its soldiers died to accomplish an objective. Trillions more could be mustered if trillions failed in their duty. The mortal angel felt sorry for those poor slaves, as the Legion took care of its people with the absolute best training and equipment money could buy. The Legion Master had never shied away from a thing because of cost, especially not when it meant saving the lives of his men. Such a caring personality from their governing creator was just one of the many reasons why the Legion was such an effective fighting force. While some standardization existed in the Legion, a willingness to use nanomachines meant all manner of unique ammunition and weapons could be manufactured in the field, provided the raw resources were available. Having its soldiers use the weapons they specialized in from their backgrounds was a luxury not known to any other nation because of cold and uncaring logistics across interstellar distances. The Empire, currently ruled by Creator Bast, had one of this universe's largest standing armies thanks to its population, which threatened to break into the septillion range. Fearing slave revolts, the slave armies were equipped with only the most basic of equipment, relying on sheer quantity and weight of numbers to get the job done, while the overseers and citizen armies had access to, if not current, then close enough universal standard gear. Making the necessary mental connection to zoom in on one of the overseers, Ansel saw a tall and painfully skinny individual wearing a linen kilt who had the head of a great cat standing next to a Legion Decurion, watching the slaves file through the gates. It was one of Bast's personal guard. Such slaves had been genetically modified to take on individual traits found to be most pleasing by their respective Empire gods. Personally, Ansel found the practice to be disgusting, while Katarina found it fascinating. Several nights previous, the pair had watched a column of slaves wearing bull heads leading a column of their lesser brethren into the shifting sands. Despite the gunner's reservations on the practice, he knew the genetically altered slaves of the Empire stood a better chance of breaching the city's walls. Though 1 out of 1,000,000 odds was still a loss to the mortal angel. As the image was magnified, the feline-headed slave jumped from his position on the low wall to join the back of the column. Ansel shook his head and spoke. "Been seeing more of the other overseers than the kitty's partner. I would have thought we would have seen more of Creator Bast's own given her new relationship with the old man." Katarina tried to warn her partner, but was too slow on the draw as a new voice echoed off the walls of the Behemoth's armored core. "The nature of our relationship does not include using more of her enforcers than is necessary, Ansel Kruger. However, I think we can all agree there should be more of the kitties." The gunner jumped in his chair as if being electrocuted, only to have his knees lose a battle with the underside of his console. He barely felt his protesting legs as his heart hammered wildly in his chest. Once he regained his composure, the gunner removed his helmet and performed a bizarre series of movements to stand up at attention with his closed right fist over his heart. An enormous figure stood staring at him with a wicked grin on his face. It was the old creator hiding under the name of the cast-out angel, Lucifer, called by the moniker Old Man by his angels to prevent calling a name which would draw his attention. But Ansel had not used his name. Lucifer stood over 11 feet tall, although he was known to be whatever size and shape he wished on a given day, as he was a creator after all, a being capable of making entire universes and everything in them to exacting specifications. He wore his standard, thrice-abused Legion uniform out of habit. His knee-high black boots had not seen polish in what looked to be over a century, and his tight black pants had patches on top of patches. What used to be a royal purple colonial-style jacket now looked like sun-bleached lavender with silver buttons and accents so tarnished they appeared black. An ancient falchion sword hung from the left side of his belt with an equally abused pistol on his right. Silver eyes, which had a habit of emitting their own light, glared amused at Ansel from underneath a wealth of silver-colored hair which was pulled back into a ponytail thanks to a silk ribbon so hard used, it looked to be on the verge of giving up and surrendering to time. To the uninitiated, Lucifer looked like a washed-up soldier who had seen too many wars to have remained sane in his old age. To those who understood the ancient being, he looked this way because it was comfortable to do so, and it allowed him to dress up and go into public without anyone knowing who he really was. Regardless of what anyone said, Lucifer would tell you to your face he no longer cared what he looked like. "You try living forever and tell me how you feel in the morning," he would often say. The other more common reason was that most legionnaires preferred their gear to look hard used, because it meant you used it in the field rather than standing around looking good on a parade ground. Ansel spoke quickly. "I'm sorry if I offended you, my lord." Lucifer turned to Katarina. "Gods, you do like them young, don't you, Cat?" he said, before turning back to the confused gunner. "I know you don't remember much of your Ascension Day, Ansel, but could you do me the courtesy of not groveling? It really grates on the nerves after several universes' worth of time." A sly smile crossed the ancient being's face as he added, "Isn't that right, Cat?" Ansel's head snapped to look at his partner, who had always flat-out refused to tell him how old she was. "No comment," Katarina said, looking away as if other things were more interesting. Lucifer flashed her a wolfish grin before moving his hands to pull up a hollow image of Buchanal from the Behemoth's computer files. The image showed multiple icons for still-moving units, and the arrows which projected their current movement directions besides time estimates. The ancient being then traced his hand in a sweeping arc around through desolate desert to the opposite side of the besieged city. "How long do you think it would take you to make it here, Cat?" The sentient took one look at the terrain and said, "No more than 3 hours, assuming you want us to stay out of the range of their guns and as hidden as possible." Lucifer nodded. "I do," he said. "Sentience Halmand is knocking down the Defender's reconnaissance drones as quickly as he can find them, but there is always the possibility he has missed a few." "Halmand does not make mistakes," Katarina interrupted. "What do you want us to do once we reach the other side?" "Figured that would have been obvious." "My lord," Ansel said, "respectfully, we are a support walker. Wouldn't one of the Goliaths be better for a more front-line role?" "Respectfully," Lucifer replied, mirroring the gunner's tone with a smile. You should check the specs of your rig and compare them to the other behemoths. I think you will find some interesting differences, given who your partner is. Regardless, the rest of the armor will be advancing with me as we go knock on the front door. You, Ansel Kruger, will be the real assault." Lucifer pulled an ancient and tarnished pocket watch from his jacket pocket and looked at the time before shaking his head and vanishing from sight. His voice echoed faintly in the armored core. "Let me know when you're about to start your run so we can start distracting them. Oh, your sister sends her regards, Kat." Katarina recovered instantly and sat back in her chair to begin moving the behemoth in support of the Legion Master's plans, which forced Ansel to grab part of his console or risk falling over from the rocking of his partner's metal hips. The gunner resumed his post and crammed his helmet back over his head to assist in plotting a course which would go around the worst of the terrain. His contributions were not necessary. In fact, his entire position was irrelevant when compared to the processing speed of his synthetic partner. Though eternity is a long time to spend by oneself, and having someone to talk to who shared like interests kept one from going insane, mostly at any rate. It took Ansel close to 3 minutes to plot his course and put it on one of the hollow screens to his right. Katarina gave it a quick once-over and nodded her head. "So," Katarina said, "did you really have to bring up Creator Bast and draw the old man's attention to us? How was I supposed to know he was here? Besides, I remembered what you told me and didn't use his name, so how did he know we were referring to him?" The sentient went silent, and Ansel could feel his partner's reluctance to answer through the mental interface. The gunner continued in a low, quiet tone. "The rumors are true about him, aren't they? Gods, that means. I thought they were just rumors." "No," Katarina said. "I will deny this if anyone else asks, but the rumors you heard about the old man are entirely true. Trust me." "Just how old are you?" Katarina snorted. "Older than you, obviously." Ansel leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Okay, be that way, like you always are. So why didn't you tell me who your sister is? You never mentioned her before?" "Of course I have." "No, Kat. I'm pretty sure I would have definitely remembered my partner talking about their sister." "Sure you would have, Mr. Pickled Brain," the behemoth's sentient said sheepishly. "See, the thing is, well, my actual biological sister from before we went into the dreamland is Morana. She—" "Hold up," Ansel protested. "Morana, the sentient who runs the battleship the old man makes his home on, Morana? The one who did, well, whatever it was that happened to your people." Katarina nodded, unseen as she leaned back to cross her arms and pout. "I didn't know having her for a sister was a mortal sin or something." "You know that's not what I mean. I am just wondering why you are a lowly behemoth pilot when your sister is." The gunner's voice trailed off as the words the Legion Master had just spoken echoed throughout his mind. "I think you will find some interesting differences, considering who your partner is. Kat, how long have we been working together? And why haven't you told me any of this after all we've been through?" "Don't be upset with me," Katarina said, fidgeting in her chair and focusing on the ocean of sun-baked sand stretching out before their jogging war machine. All of the screens showed nothing but drab khaki-colored sand and nothing else to take the sentient's mind off of her partner's question. The woman finally sighed and said, "I have 2 brothers, 1 sister, and a cousin. And we were the ones who created the digital dreamland, which ruined our people. Despite our unforgivable sins, the old man placed my biological family in positions of leadership within the Legion after the awakening. I just so happened to be the head of the entire armored vehicle program. It's no big deal or anything, and I just don't like to talk about it. That's all. I don't consider it to be special or anything. It's just a job like any other. And thanks to the quantum comms, it's not like I need to be cooped up in some stuffy office without windows. 7,000 years of working together instantly told Ansel his partner was intentionally leaving out a great deal, and the real story of what had happened to her people was far worse. He knew she would tell him whenever she felt like it. For now, he chose to rationalize his circumstance as if he was the driver for an army general. Said general would not confide in his driver the plans for a full campaign. The gunner began to laugh. "What did I say?" Katarina asked. "Since you're some grand high senator or something in the Legion, does this mean I get a pay raise or maybe a snazzy uniform if I am to be your factotum?" "Nope," the woman laughed. "I spent your salary on the coffee maker with too many buttons. As for the uniform, well, I spent that money on beer, since it's not like you ever get to see the sun, and so no one will ever get to see you in your full regalia anyway." "I hate it here," the gunner remarked blandly, holding up his fist behind him for the customary fist bump which he received. "My uncle always told me to go into the Space Force if I wanted a comfy career. You just can't make men happy with anything, can you? Give them a fully furnished home and beer, and get no respect." Ansel drained the last of his coffee, checked the screens to see they were alone, and stood up to go to the kitchen to get more. "You see," he said, as he was leaving the cockpit. "It is really nice what you have done with the place and all. It's just—" "Just what?" Katarina replied with narrowed eyes. "You left skid marks in the fancy self-cleaning turbo toilet." "Oh, hell no. You're not putting that on me since I don't need to eat like you do." Ansel shrugged as he walked down the corridor to the kitchen. "Well, it can't be me since I thought your coffee maker with all the buttons was a bidet. So, who does that leave, since there is only the two of us in here?"